Now, about your neurological diseases, I will wager if they do what they're planning on doing, you will see tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cases of Guillain-Barré and other neurological damage in pregnant women. Their children are going to be damaged. The children are going to be damaged because they're planning on vaccinating babies with this stuff.
I think that the most incriminating evidence would suggest strongly for any researchers and parents who have some intention to investigate themselves and learn the truth. They should look at what is going on in the UK. They should look at what's going on at the Centers for Disease Control, and they should look at what's going on at a company called Novavax. And when this flu broke out, it was extremely interesting because with a behavioral science degree expertise from Harvard, essentially I looked at propaganda. I looked at this issue as potentially social control, psychological operation, and a manipulation of the population through propaganda. And what I was shocked, absolutely shocked, to find that when the first cases of the Mexican outbreak were reported, at that very moment, the Journal of Virology was heralding this precise vaccine that was necessary to eliminate this precisely bizarre, never-before-seen combination. They reported, Reuters and the officials were actually reporting that it was a never-before-seen virus that combined, as I mentioned earlier, swine flu, avian flu, and Spanish flu, and that this was a vaccine. If you read the Novavax and Centers for Disease Control's publications, now this is a U.S. federal government agency working with a for-profit corporation, and worse than that, when you look at Dr. Rick Bright, who is the general director for the influenza global program for Novavax, he used to work for a fellow by the name of Dr. O'Donis, who is the man who actually is responsible for delivering the viruses used for the vaccination.
Just to add on to what Dr. Len Horowitz was saying about Dr. Rick Bright, he is also part of an organization called the International Society for Influenza and Other Respiratory Virus Diseases, and it seems that all of the individuals in this organization are also part of privately owned and run organizations dealing with infectious diseases, biotechnology, other such things. And the website is www.isirv.org.
And so here you have a corporation that is literally in bed with the CDC or vice versa. You have a tremendous conflict of interest. And then on top of that, you have to look at what's going on in Britain, because the World Health Organization is pulling all the political strings to control the response, this alleged emergency response that's necessary for biopreparedness. And so when you look at World Health Organization, that's when I was absolutely blown out. I found some documents that now are being posted literally worldwide. The postings of the documents that were basically behind closed doors meetings between a Dr. James Robertson, who is pretty much not only the gatekeeper for multi-billion-dollar vaccine deals, he's the principal promoter for governments to purchase stockpiles of vaccinations in the flu arena. Specifically, that's his area of expertise. Beyond that, he owns the technology. He basically has an agreement, a material trade agreement or exchange agreement, whereby he'll make millions if and when the vaccine is brought to market, commercialized, and sold to the governments. That's where he stands to make his fortune. Well, interestingly enough, that's precisely what happened. As this outbreak allegedly was happening, and this company and the Centers for Disease Control and Reuters was reporting it, were officially saying that this was a combination. And here they had a Johnny on the spot, just came out with the first preclinical investigation of how this perfect vaccine would eliminate not just avian flu, not just swine flu, but as you mentioned earlier, combinations of all of it. Oh man, it was the wonder drug on the spot. Well, I saw the stocks go haywire. They made so much money, you can't even imagine. And so this is what I saw. And as literally a public health professional, I'm appalled. And I think that we are owed an investigation, a criminal investigation, and I believe that what we're looking at is classically defined as genocide. We have serial homicide for certain. There's many people that have died now, and that the genocide is not a sensational or superlative label I'm giving this. It's strictly defined in Webster's dictionary as the mass killing or enslaving of populations for profit, politics or ideology, and we're dealing with a lot of that right here.
You know, now they are running in 21st century. They are behaving like people behaved in the dark Middle Ages and creating a panic, and unfortunately, as you mentioned it, people believe it. I actually would join Leonard in saying that the parents and really any potential recipients of vaccines should use their brains, should use common sense, and realize that, number one, infectious diseases, natural infectious diseases, are beneficial. They prime and mature the immune system and represent developmental milestones. But because in the 60s of the 20th century, the drug companies discovered the dollar sign behind vaccines, because until that time, vaccination was not really pushed as the same way as it is pushed now. Indeed, when you read literature, as I do, meaning orthodox medical journals published in the most reputable medical journals, the so-called eradication of smallpox was actually orchestrated, and that was one good thing they have done, because reactions and ineffectiveness of smallpox vaccine became really an embarrassment. So they decided to pronounce smallpox eradicated, and they wrote in innumerable articles that the biggest benefit of eradication of smallpox, or pronouncing eradication of smallpox, was that now they can stop vaccinating with the smallpox vaccine. Discovered that they can sell vaccines for little babies, frightening parents, you know, the deadly whooping cough is coming and things like that. Honestly, it's back into the Middle Ages. People believe it. Parents can stop it from tomorrow. Certainly in countries like Australia, where vaccination is not mandatory, people don't have to do it. They don't even have to explain why they are not doing it. But parents listen to these horror stories. You know that despite vaccination, whooping cough epidemics occur every 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. They actually are, the disease is kept alive by vaccination. There is so much evidence, particularly in the United States, meaning published evidence, that straight after vaccination, after the first dose of the vaccine, which is usually given between 6 and 8 weeks, children develop whooping cough. 65% of recipients of the whooping cough vaccine develop whooping cough from the vaccine. And the best evidence comes from Sweden, because Sweden stopped using whooping cough vaccine for 11 years, and between 1979 and 1990, and they didn't have a single case of whooping cough if in babies below 6 months, indeed below 12 months, when they didn't use the vaccine. Then in 1990, they started trialing those acellular whooping cough vaccines. By the way, they are not safer at all compared with the whole cell vaccine, but that's another story. And with, as soon as those trial babies were given the vaccine, 3 doses of vaccine between 2, 4, and 6 months, they had huge outbreak of whooping cough in those trialed babies. And despite this obvious failure, they resumed whooping cough vaccination, and now they have outbreaks of whooping cough of catastrophic proportions in small babies. Yeah. Now, there isn't a better evidence that actually the whooping cough vaccine causes whooping cough.
Well, they're planning on giving the vaccine to 4.9 billion people worldwide. They have been caught in the past giving vaccines that were specifically designed to produce infertility in African women. The women caught on, wouldn't take the vaccine. They tested the vaccine, and found out they had put anti-trophoblastic antigen in it with a specific goal of producing infertility. So they have been caught using a tetanus vaccine. They also used it in Central America. And they even asked them, what do you think the effect will be of giving free vaccines? Let me give you his answer to that question. We don't know. That's the beginning of his answer. We don't know what it'll do. We don't know what happens when you combine vaccines with different viruses in it. Well, the virologists know. The viruses start exchanging their genetics. They develop hybrids. They develop new viruses that produce new diseases. So he's lying.